These days, Christmas is thought of as a time for joy and laughter. That's great, obviously, but many people don't know that Christmas time was also a time for telling scary stories back in the day. That's how we end up with stories like A Christmas Carol. This tradition has faded over the years, but today, we're gonna bring it back. Yeah. Let's put the spirits back into the Christmas spirit. Make sure you're wrapped up and ready for this one, guys. It's about to get pretty cold in here. My name is Danny Burke, and this is the top 10 scary Christmas stories. And just like I normally do, guys, with these story type videos, obviously I'm not going to be able to tell you guys the whole story. I'm going to give you like an intro or a snippet or a summary, but all the links to the full stories are going to be in the description box, so I recommend you go and check them out. Starting off at number 10 now, we have the sock puppet. This one comes from Ireland, where many years ago a man owned all the land around a village and rented it out to the poor farmers there for a profit. He was very kind to his own family, but brutal to the other villagers. He made a fortune from this cruelty. The villagers hatched a plan to overthrow him one day. One Christmas night, he threw a lavish party for his friends while the villagers were starving in the cold. A villager arrived bearing a gift. He said it was a present for the rich man's daughter. The girl opened it to find a sock puppet that the villager had knitted. He asked for some food in return. The rich man gave him a single potato. The girl loved the sock puppet though. She named it Charlie. She took it to bed that night. When her father went to check on her, she was fast asleep. But he noticed that Charlie was still on her hand, and its plastic eyes were staring right at him. The villagers were about to get their bloody revenge on the rich man thanks to a murderous sock puppet called Charlie. Moving on to number 9 now, we have Christmas tree decorations. This is a story from Scary for Kids about a girl called Juliet who was decorating a Christmas tree. Her mum was working late, and so when she finished with the tree, she sat down to watch some TV. It was then that she heard a scratching noise at the door. She looked through the peephole to see a man outside. He was a large, bearded guy in a red suit with fluffy white trim. He banged on the door loudly. Juliet asked, "Who's there?" The man said he was Santa Claus and that he wanted to come in because he was cold and tired and hungry. Juliet didn't believe him. She told him that her mother wasn't home and she wanted him to leave. His face began to go red and twist with anger. He knocked even harder and growled,
"It's Santa Claus, Juliet. Have you laid out some milk and cookies for me, Juliet? You know how much Santa loves his milk and cookies."
Honestly, it's a creepy story from start to finish, and it only gets worse for Juliet from there. All I'll say is make sure you don't read it right after you've eaten. Moving on to number 8 now, we have The Figure. This one comes from Arthur H, who shared his story on cagemom.com. He said, "My mother, to whom I was very close, passed away in 1964 when I was 17 years old. I left home that year and moved to Ontario from Nova Scotia. In 1969, I met a girl who I will call Karen, and we got married in March of 1970. In December of 1971, we were expecting our first child. We were living in a small 1.5 bedroom bungalow. There was a fireplace in the living room. My wife and I loved the fireplace, and we had it lit every night. It was Christmas Eve 1971, and we had just finished putting the gifts under the tree, and a nice fire gave off a beautiful glow. On the tree, one string of lights, which was supposed to flash, had stopped several days before. It was 5 minutes to midnight when the fireplace suddenly just about went out, and a string of lights started to flash, and the other lights stopped flashing. My wife and I were sitting on the floor, and it had become very chilly in the room. I looked over to my lazy boy chair, and a figure was sitting there. My mother, with a big beautiful smile on her face. My wife, who had never met my mother, said she could see the same thing. This ghost never spoke, but just kept looking at me and my wife and smiling. At 12 midnight, the fire in the fireplace started up again, and the lights on the tree stopped flashing, and the others started flashing again. I looked over in the chair, and the ghost was gone. No matter what I did to those Christmas lights, they never flashed again. Next up at number 7 now, we have The Boy Who Killed Santa Claus. This one was written by Mark Allen Gunnels. It's about a 7-year-old boy called Henry Childers. He asked his mum to stay up past 10 on Christmas Eve one year, but she warned him that if he didn't go to sleep, Santa wouldn't come that night. He had hoped that Santa would get things right this year. Last year, he asked for an Xbox, but he got a PlayStation instead. His mum told him not to worry, Santa was probably all out of Xboxes, but Henry had not forgotten. Henry had a rage inside of him. He had been plotting all year. He knew he was too little to fight Santa, but he also knew that Santa liked to have milk and cookies. He also knew that food and drink can always be poisoned. Finish the story to find out what happened to the boy who killed Santa Claus. It's a good one. Moving on to number 6 now, we have Bloody Axe. This story actually comes from an old horror comic, and the pictures you're seeing now are from just that. It's written from the perspective of an 8-year-old boy. He would lie very still under the old moth-eaten quilt his mother had made for him. He would be wide awake and listen out for sounds. On one Christmas Eve, he heard the front door closing and the clomp, clomp, clomp of his father's mud-caked boots, and then there was the sound of dripping on the stairs. Drip, drip, drip. Then his father would pass by his doorway and the light would cast his shadow on the bedroom wall and the shadow of the bloody axe he always carried in his hands. At breakfast the next morning, he slowly asked his mother where his father had been last night. She looked at him with sad eyes but never said a word. By the end of this story though, we learn that there is a connection with the rumours of the nearby axe murderer and his father's return every night. Let's just say it doesn't have a pretty ending. Moving on to number 5 now, we have The Carol Singers. This is a story based on The Vanishing House by Bernard Capes. The storyteller said that when they were a boy, their grandfather and father were alcoholics who never worked. They could play instruments though. On one Christmas Eve, they took him Christmas caroling with them, door to door. It was a dark night, snow was falling and the wind cut through them like a knife. They came to a big mansion decorated with Christmas lights. The grandfather knocked on the front door and they began to play some old Christmas carols. When the door finally swung open, in the dim light they could see a young woman stood holding a tray of glasses in her hands. She picked up a glass and handed it to the grandfather, who excitedly took it. The boy looked up to a window above and saw a hideous face peering out of the shadows. He looked back at the woman in the doorway and her face had twisted hideously too. They would live to regret the day they ever came to that mansion and the grandfather taking that glass. Alright everyone, moving on to number 4 now, we have The Clown Puppet. There was once 3 sisters, aged 15, 12 and 7. They told their parents what they wanted for their Christmas gift of choice. The oldest asked for a laptop, the middle for an iPad and the youngest for a small doll. On Christmas Day, the oldest and middle daughters got what they asked for. They were over the moon. The youngest daughter didn't receive a doll though. Instead, she got a clown puppet. She thought it was cute and so she kept it. 2 days later, the youngest daughter disappeared. The next Christmas, the oldest daughter asked for an iPad and the middle child asked for a clown puppet. Sure enough, 2 days later, she disappeared. The next Christmas, the last remaining daughter asked for a clown puppet in memory of her sisters. She disappeared as well. The heartbroken parents never recovered. They eventually became so poor they had to sell everything for money. One day they went into the attic to look for items to sell. That's when they saw, in the darkness at the very back, the clown puppet was sitting on a throne made from lollipop sticks. Arranged all around it were the severed heads and limbs of the 3 missing girls. Next up at number 3 now, we have the GRITHER. He told them the story of the grifter, the most awful thing in the world. He lives in a cave at the North Pole. The coldest, wettest place on earth is where the grifter makes his home. He sleeps in the wreck of a ship. He doesn't mind the cold and he doesn't mind the wet, but the thing he hates most of all is to hear someone say his name. He has very good ears and they get bigger every time his name is spoken anywhere on earth. Sometimes his ears get so big he can use them to fly. At this point, Steffa said she didn't like the story. It was scaring her. It's too late now, the mother said. We've already mentioned his name. The grifter is probably on his way to our house this very minute. Those words will come to haunt them before this story ends. Moving on to number 2 now guys, we have BELSNICKEL. If you're watching this from a Germanic speaking country, you may be familiar already with this story. In that part of the world, the BELSNICKEL is a fur-clad Christmas gift bringer. He has a long tongue and is typically very ragged and disheveled. His clothes are dirty and ripped, and he's known for beating misbehaved children with a stick. He's a mythical creature that serves as an almost anti-Santa-like creature. If it's Santa's job to deliver joy and presents, it's the BELSNICKEL's job to make sure they deserve it. And finally, number 1 now, we have Purple Fingernails. This one comes from the Scary for Kids website, and I'll read it exactly as I found it. There was once a little girl who had a large collection of dolls. One Christmas, she saw a doll in the window of a department store that she absolutely had to have. It had long, flowing blonde hair and a lovely blue dress. But the thing that impressed her the most about the doll was that it had lovely, bold, purple fingernails. When Christmas morning came, she was delighted to find the doll with the purple fingernails lying under the Christmas tree. She played with it all day, and when she went to sleep, she put it on the table at her bedside. That night, the little girl was awakened by strange noises. It was still dark outside. She looked over for her doll, but it was nowhere to be found. The girl, puzzled, got out of bed and walked into the hallway. The door to her parents' room was ajar, and she pushed it open softly and looked in. Her parents appeared to be sleeping soundly, and so she went back to bed. In the morning, she saw the doll with the purple fingernails was sitting on the table by her bed, exactly where she had left it. She assumed that she must have just been having a bad dream, but when she went into her parents' room that morning, she found them both lying dead in a pool of blood. There were 2 purple doll fingernails stabbed into their hearts. Alright guys, what I want to end on. That's all I got time for in this video, I'm afraid. I hope you guys are about to have or are currently having a lovely Christmas wherever you are in the world. Maybe pass one of these scary Christmas stories on to someone you love. I'm sure they'll appreciate it. Until then, thanks as always for watching guys. My name is Danny Burke and I'll see you all in the next video.